So let's take a look at the Android architecture. Here's a diagram that shows the entire picture of the Android architecture. You can see that at the bottom we have a Linux kernel that has a large number of drivers basically that are they're interacting directly with the hardware. Then above that we have some libraries. These are mainly written in C and C++. We have the Android runtime that has its own virtual machine. And above that, the application framework, where a lot of the Java system type of things that the application interact with live. That you'll mainly be programming against the application framework. And then applications, the basic applications that come with the phone, and your applications would go here also. We can take a look at each layer here. The Linux kernel is a basic hardware abstraction layer. That's basically what its purpose is. It's going to be interacting with the hardware. No other layer really is going to do this directly. It handles drivers and security. You can see a lot of the drivers here: display driver, camera driver, audio, Wi-Fi. Then we're going to look at the libraries here. So this libraries, you're going to have things like the standard C library, the libc. The media libraries are going to be composed of things for audio, video, images. It handles a huge amount of different audio and video and image formats. The Surface Manager, which is basically going to give you access to the display. It integrates the 2D and 3D layers together. You can have both on a screen in an Android application. Then the libweb core, which is basically a WebKit browser engine, the same that Safari is based off of. And then we have SGL, which is our 2D graphics library. We have some 3D libraries, the OpenGL ES, which will allow us to build full 3D applications and games. And then for our font rendering, they have FreeType, which is a freely distributable fonts, so you don't have to worry about copyright issues there. And then SQLite is the underlying relational database that is used by Android. Now, the Android runtime is very different than what you might think. The libraries that make up most of the standard Java libraries are included in the Android runtime, but they're not exactly the same ones, and they're not all there. So some of the things specifically that I can think of that you should be aware of that are not there in the Java libraries are things like reflection. You're not going to be able to do some of the cool tricks that you can do in Java. So you really have to consider that when you are developing an Android application and you want to pull in some Java library, that if it uses some of this stuff that's not supported in Android, you won't really be able to use it. It's not a JVM. This is a key thing here. It uses a Dalvik VM, which it's very much like the JVM. It'll take a jar file that gets recompiled to a DEX file, and then that DEX file is what gets interpreted by the Dalvik VM, but it is not a JVM. This can be a little bit confusing at first, but the basic thing to understand here is that it looks like the JVM, it feels like the JVM, but there are some differences, so you do need to be aware. And at this layer, also one important thing to note is that each app is going to run in its own VM. So that's actually one of the reasons why they had to create the Dalvik VM, is to optimize it to run on a mobile device and to allow all these different VMs to spawn, one for each application. If we look at the application framework layer, this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. It's a full set of services. They're all built in Java. We have things like views and windows, which are basic display elements. The resources, like your images, content providers, which are basically going to give you access to a SQL database or a contacts application, any kind of data that you would need in your application. The phone services and APIs are going to be the things like the dialer, the location manager, a full notification system is built in at this layer that you can access. This lifecycle management, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but at this layer is where it's going on here, and where the operating system is deciding which applications to run and kill at different times. And then all of the applications that you build are going to directly interact with this layer. In fact, as I said before, all the applications that Google built that are on your phone directly interact with this layer.